Rebecca Martinez had the kind of life that made her neighbors jealous. Every morning at 7:30, she would walk out of her White House on Elm Street wearing a neat business suit and carrying a coffee cup that matched her handbag. Her brown hair was always perfectly styled, and she had a smile for everyone she met. The people in Millfield Heights loved Rebecca. She was the woman who brought homemade cookies to new neighbors and helped elderly Mrs. Peterson carry her groceries every Tuesday. When the community center needed volunteers for the annual charity drive, Rebecca was always the first to sign up. She worked late into the night organizing events and never complained about it. Rebecca worked at a big marketing company downtown. She had started there 5 years ago as a regular employee, but her hard work had paid off. Just 2 months earlier, she had been promoted to senior marketing director. Her boss, Mr. Williams, often told other employees that Rebecca was the best worker he had ever hired. At home, Rebecca seemed just as happy. She lived with her husband, David Martinez, in a beautiful 2-story house with a perfectly cut lawn and flower beds full of colorful roses. David worked as an accountant for a small firm across town. He was 37 years old, 3 years older than Rebecca, and had thick black hair that was starting to turn gray at the sides. The Martinez couple had been married for 8 years. They had met at a coffee shop near Rebecca's old job. David had been sitting alone reading a newspaper when Rebecca accidentally bumped into his table and spilled his coffee. Instead of getting angry, David had laughed and offered to buy her a drink. They talked for 3 hours that day, and David later said he knew right away that Rebecca was special. Their wedding had been small, but beautiful. Rebecca wore her grandmother's white dress, and David cried when he saw her walking down the aisle. The whole neighborhood had been invited to the reception in the Martinez backyard. Everyone said they had never seen a couple more in love. Over the years, Rebecca and David seemed to have built the perfect life together. They took vacations to nice places like California and Florida. Rebecca would post pictures on social media showing them holding hands on beaches or hiking through mountains. David always had his arm around her in these photos, and both of them were always smiling. Rebecca loved animals. Every Saturday morning, she volunteered at the Millfield Animal Shelter. She helped feed the dogs and cats, cleaned their cages, and played with the animals that looked sad or scared. The shelter workers adored Rebecca because she never missed a day and always stayed longer than she was supposed to. Jennifer Adams, who worked with Rebecca, considered her a best friend. They had lunch together every Friday and often went shopping on weekends. Jennifer lived 2 blocks away from Rebecca, and they would sometimes walk their dogs together in the evening. Jennifer always said that Rebecca was the kindest person she knew. Amanda Johnson was another close friend from Rebecca's office. Amanda and Rebecca had started working at the company on the same day 5 years earlier. They had been nervous about their first day, but they helped each other learn the job and became good friends. Amanda trusted Rebecca more than anyone else at work. Rebecca's sister Lisa Walker lived about an hour away in Columbus. Lisa was 2 years younger than Rebecca and worked as a teacher at an elementary school. The 2 sisters talked on the phone almost every day. Lisa often visited on weekends, and Rebecca would cook big dinners for the family. Lisa loved these visits because Rebecca was an excellent cook and always made Lisa's favorite dessert, chocolate cake. David seemed to love Rebecca's family. He was always polite to Lisa and remembered her birthday every year. When Lisa's car broke down the previous spring, David had driven all the way to Columbus to help her fix it. Lisa thought David was a wonderful husband for her sister. The neighbors on Elm Street all liked the Martinez couple. Tom and Carol Roberts lived next door and had watched Rebecca and David move in 8 years earlier. Carol often said that Rebecca and David were the best neighbors anyone could ask for. They kept their property neat, they were never too loud, and they always helped when someone needed it. Rebecca had a daily routine that everyone knew. She left for work at 8 in the morning and came home around 6 in the evening. On Tuesday and Thursday nights, she went to the gym. On Wednesday nights, she had dinner with friends. Weekends were for household chores, volunteering at the animal shelter, and spending time with David. Everyone in the neighborhood felt safe, knowing Rebecca was around. She was the person people called when they were worried about something. When Mrs. Peterson's cat went missing last year, Rebecca had organized a search party, and they found the cat hiding under a neighbor's porch. When the Johnson family's house was broken into, Rebecca had brought them food and helped them feel better. David traveled sometimes for his work. About once a month, he would go to other cities to meet with clients or attend meetings. Rebecca never seemed to mind these trips. She would tell her friends that it gave her time to catch up on reading or work on her hobby of painting. She had painted several beautiful pictures of flowers and landscapes that hung in their living room. No one in Millfield Heights could have imagined that anything bad would ever happen to Rebecca Martinez. She was too nice, too careful, and too loved by everyone around her. She was the woman who always locked her doors, always let someone know where she was going, and always came home when she said she would. But on the morning of October 15th, 2019, Rebecca Martinez did not show up for work. She did not call to say she would be late. She did not answer her phone when her worried coworkers tried to reach her. For the first time in 5 years, Rebecca Martinez had broken her perfect routine. Amanda Johnson knew immediately that something was wrong. Rebecca had never missed an important meeting, and today was the biggest presentation of the year. When Amanda called Rebecca's phone, it went straight to voicemail. When she called again an hour later, the same thing happened. That afternoon, Amanda made a decision that would change everything. She got in her car and drove to the White House on Elm Street to find out what had happened to her friend. Amanda Johnson drove slowly down Elm Street, hoping to see Rebecca's car in the driveway. When she saw the red Honda Civic sitting there as usual, she felt both relieved and more worried at the same time. If Rebecca was home, why had she not answered her phone? If she was sick, why had she not called work? Amanda parked behind Rebecca's car and walked up to the front door. The house looked normal from the outside. The flowers in the front yard were watered and healthy. The newspaper was still on the porch, which was strange because Rebecca always brought it inside first thing in the morning. Amanda knocked on the door and waited. No answer came from inside the house. She knocked harder and called out Rebecca's name. Still nothing. Amanda tried the door handle and was surprised when it turned easily. The door was not locked, which was very unusual for Rebecca. Amanda stepped inside and called Rebecca's name again. The house was quiet except for the sound of the air conditioning running. Everything looked neat and clean, just like Rebecca always kept it. Amanda walked through the living room and into the kitchen. On the kitchen counter, Amanda found Rebecca's purse sitting open. Inside the purse were Rebecca's wallet, car keys, and driver's license. Her cell phone was there too, which explained why no one could reach her. Amanda looked at the phone and saw 17 missed calls from work and friends. In the dining room, Amanda found something that made her heart beat faster. Rebecca's laptop computer was open on the table. On the screen was an email that Rebecca had been writing to a client. The email was only half finished, and it looked like Rebecca had stopped typing in the middle of a sentence. Next to the laptop was a coffee mug that was still half full of cold coffee. Amanda touched the mug and could tell it had been sitting there for many hours. There was also a piece of toast on a plate with only one bite taken out of it. Amanda felt scared now. She knew Rebecca would never leave the house without her purse and phone. She would never leave food on the table, and she would never leave an important email unfinished. Something was very wrong. Amanda called the police from Rebecca's kitchen phone. The operator told her that officers would come to the house right away. While she waited, Amanda looked around more carefully. She checked all the rooms upstairs and downstairs but found no sign of Rebecca anywhere. Detective Michael Thompson arrived at the Martinez house 30 minutes later. He was a tall man with gray hair who had worked for the Millfield Heights Police Department for 22 years. Detective Thompson had handled many missing person cases and he knew what to look for. Amanda showed Detective Thompson everything she had found. The detective took notes and asked Amanda many questions about Rebecca. He wanted to know about Rebecca's habits, her friends, her family, and whether she had seemed upset or worried about anything lately. Amanda told Detective Thompson that Rebecca had seemed normal when they talked at work the day before. Rebecca had been excited about the big presentation she was supposed to give today. She had stayed late at the office working on her slides and had seemed happy when she left. Detective Thompson looked through Rebecca's purse and found her credit cards, cash, and identification. He checked her phone and saw all the missed calls and text messages from worried friends and co-workers. The last text message Rebecca had sent was to her sister Lisa at 9:30 the night before. It said goodnight and that she would call Lisa the next day. The detective walked through every room in the house. He looked for signs of a struggle or anything that seemed out of place. Most of the house looked perfectly normal. Rebecca's clothes were neatly hung in the closet. The bed was made with the corners tucked in tightly, just like Rebecca always did it. In the bathroom, Detective Thompson found Rebecca's toothbrush in its usual place. Her contact lens case was on the counter, and her glasses were folded neatly on the bedside table. This told the detective that Rebecca had probably planned to sleep at home that night. Detective Thompson called the police station and asked for more officers to help search the area. He also asked them to put out an alert for Rebecca Martinez. Her description and photo would be sent to all police departments in the state. While they waited for more help to arrive, Detective Thompson asked Amanda to call Rebecca's family and close friends. He wanted to know if anyone had heard from Rebecca or if she had mentioned any plans to go somewhere. Amanda called Lisa Walker first. Rebecca's sister became very upset when she heard that Rebecca was missing. Lisa said she had talked to Rebecca the night before and everything seemed fine. Rebecca had mentioned that David was away on a business trip, but that was normal and Rebecca never seemed to mind when he traveled. Amanda also called Jennifer Adams and other friends from work. Nobody had heard from Rebecca since the day before. Everyone said the same thing, that Rebecca would never disappear without telling someone where she was going. Detective Thompson learned that David Martinez was in Chicago for work. The detective called David's cell phone, but it went to voicemail. He left a message asking David to call back immediately about an urgent family matter. By evening, 6 police officers were searching the neighborhood around Elm Street. They knocked on doors and asked neighbors if they had seen Rebecca that morning or the night before. They searched the yards and looked in garbage cans and storage sheds. Tom Roberts, who lived next door, told police that he had not seen Rebecca that morning. He usually saw her leave for work at 8 o'clock, but today he had not noticed her car leaving. Carol Roberts said she had been doing laundry in the basement all morning and had not heard any unusual sounds from the Martinez house. Mrs. Peterson, the elderly woman who lived across the street, said she had not seen anything strange either. She always sat by her window in the mornings and watched the neighborhood, but today had been quiet and normal. At 7:30 that evening, David Martinez finally called Detective Thompson back. David sounded shocked and scared when the detective told him that Rebecca was missing. David said he was at a hotel in Chicago and could prove he had been there since Monday morning. He said he would drive home immediately. Detective Thompson could hear real worry in David's voice, and the man sounded genuinely surprised by the news. But the detective knew that in missing person cases, the husband or wife was often involved, so he would need to check David's story carefully. David Martinez arrived home at midnight, driving straight from Chicago. He looked tired and upset, and he kept asking the detective what had happened to his wife. David walked through the house and confirmed that Rebecca's belongings were all there, just as Amanda had found them. The first day of the investigation had not provided many clues about where Rebecca had gone or what had happened to her. 3 weeks had passed since Rebecca Martinez disappeared from her home on Elm Street. Detective Thompson and his team had searched everywhere they could think of. They had checked all the hospitals in the area, looked through security cameras, at shopping centers, and asked everyone in town if they had seen Rebecca. The local newspaper ran Rebecca's story on the front page. Her smiling photo appeared on television news shows. People in Millfield Heights put up yellow ribbons on their trees and posted Rebecca's picture on social media. Everyone hoped that someone would remember seeing her and call the police. David Martinez seemed to be suffering terribly. He took time off from work and spent his days helping with the search. He walked through parks and wooded areas calling Rebecca's name. He put up missing person posters on telephone poles and in store windows. He even offered a $10,000 reward for any information that would help find his wife. Lisa Walker had come to stay with David during this difficult time. She could not bear the thought of him being alone in the house where her sister had disappeared. Lisa slept in the guest room and tried to take care of David, making sure he ate meals and got some rest. Lisa was a strong woman, but the disappearance of her sister was breaking her heart. She and Rebecca had talked on the phone every day for years now. There was only silence when Lisa tried to call. Lisa kept Rebecca's number in her phone, and sometimes she would dial it just to hear Rebecca's voice on the voicemail message. During the day, Lisa tried to stay busy helping with the search efforts. She answered phone calls from reporters and organized volunteer search parties. But at night, when the house was quiet, she would cry and worry about what might have happened to Rebecca. On November 7th, Lisa decided to do some laundry. She had been staying at the Martinez house for over a week and her clothes were dirty. She carried her laundry basket down to the basement where Rebecca kept the washing machine and dryer. The basement was clean and organized, just like the rest of Rebecca's house. There were shelves with neatly folded towels and boxes labeled with their contents. Rebecca had always been very tidy, and even the basement showed how much care she put into keeping her home nice. Lisa loaded her clothes into the washing machine and added soap. As she was about to close the lid, she dropped the cap from the laundry detergent bottle. It rolled behind the washing machine and Lisa had to move the heavy machine to reach it. When Lisa pushed the washing machine aside, she saw something on the concrete floor that made her stomach feel sick. There was a large stain on the floor that looked like someone had tried very hard to clean it. The concrete was lighter in that spot, as if it had been scrubbed with bleach or other strong chemicals. But Lisa could still see a reddish-brown color around the edges of the clean area. The stain was big, maybe 3 feet across, and it had a strange pattern to it. Lisa had never noticed it before because the washing machine had always covered it completely. Lisa stared at the stain for several minutes, trying to understand what she was looking at. A terrible thought began to form in her mind, but she tried to push it away. She did not want to believe what she was thinking, but the stain looked like dried blood that someone had tried to wash away. Lisa ran upstairs and called Detective Thompson immediately. Her voice was shaking as she told him what she had found in the basement. The detective said he would come to the house right away and told Lisa not to touch anything else in the basement. Detective Thompson arrived within 20 minutes, bringing 2 other officers and a forensic specialist with him. David was not at the house when they arrived. He had gone to the police station to meet with some volunteers who wanted to help search for Rebecca. The detective asked Lisa to show him exactly what she had found. They went down to the basement together, and Lisa pointed to the stain behind the washing machine. Detective Thompson looked at it carefully and took many photos from different angles. The forensic specialist was a woman named Dr. Sarah Mitchell. She had worked on crime scenes for 15 years and was an expert at finding evidence that criminals thought they had destroyed. Dr. Mitchell looked at the stain and told Detective Thompson that it definitely looked suspicious. Dr. Mitchell went back to her van and returned with a special chemical called luminol. She explained to Lisa and the detective that luminol would glow blue in the dark if it touched blood, even blood that had been cleaned away. She turned off all the lights in the basement and sprayed the chemical on the floor. What they saw next shocked everyone in the room. Under the blue glow of the luminol, they could see that blood had been everywhere in the basement. There were spots of blood on the walls, drops on the stairs, and a large pool where the stain was located. Someone had cleaned very carefully, but they could not remove every trace of blood. Dr. Mitchell took samples from the floor and walls to test in the laboratory. She also found small pieces of hair and what looked like skin tissue that the cleaning had missed. The evidence would need to be tested, but Dr. Mitchell was sure that someone had been badly hurt in this basement. Detective Thompson called for more officers to come to the house. He also asked them to bring equipment to search the rest of the property. If someone had been killed in the basement, there might be more evidence hidden somewhere else. While they waited for backup, Detective Thompson questioned Lisa about the basement. Had she been down there before during her stay? Had she noticed any strange smells or sounds coming from downstairs? Had David ever acted strangely about anyone going into the basement? Lisa answered all the questions as best she could. She had only been in the basement a few times to use the bathroom down there. She had never noticed any bad smells. but she remembered that David had been doing a lot of laundry when she first arrived. He said he was washing all of Rebecca's clothes because it made him feel closer to her. When David returned from the police station that evening, he found his house full of police officers. Detective Thompson took him aside and told him about the blood evidence they had found. David's face went white, and he sat down heavily in a kitchen chair. David said he had no idea how blood could have gotten into the basement. He suggested that maybe Rebecca had fallen and hurt herself, then left the house to go to a hospital. But Detective Thompson knew that the amount of blood they had found meant someone had been very seriously injured, probably killed. The case was no longer about a missing person. Rebecca Martinez had been murdered in her own basement, and now Detective Thompson had to find out who killed her. After finding blood evidence in the Martinez basement, Detective Thompson knew he had to look much more carefully at David Martinez and his marriage to Rebecca. What had seemed like a perfect relationship might not have been perfect at all. The dear detective started by talking to Rebecca's closest friends and family members again. This time, he asked different questions. Instead of asking when they had last seen Rebecca, he asked about her relationship with David. Had Rebecca ever seemed afraid of her husband? Had she ever complained about problems in their marriage? At first, most people said the same thing they had always said. Rebecca and David seemed happy together. They never fought in public, and Rebecca always spoke kindly about her husband. But when Detective Thompson pushed harder and asked more specific questions, a different picture began to appear. Jennifer Adams, Rebecca's best friend from work, was the first person to admit that things might not have been as good as they seemed. Jennifer had lunch with Rebecca every Friday, and she remembered that Rebecca had been acting differently in the weeks before she disappeared. Jennifer told Detective Thompson that Rebecca had seemed worried and distracted during their last few lunches together. When Jennifer asked what was wrong, Rebecca would just say that she was tired from work. But Jennifer could tell there was something else bothering her friend. 3 weeks before Rebecca disappeared, Jennifer had seen a bruise on Rebecca's arm. When she asked about it, Rebecca said she had bumped into a door at home. The bruise was dark purple and looked painful, but Rebecca did not want to talk about it. Jennifer also remembered that Rebecca had started working late more often in the past few months. At first, Jennifer thought Rebecca was just busy with her new promotion. But now she wondered if Rebecca had been staying at work because she did not want to go home. Detective Thompson talked to Amanda Johnson next. Amanda had worked closely with Rebecca and had been the one to find her missing. Amanda told the detective that Rebecca had been excited about her promotion to senior marketing director, but she had also seemed nervous about something. Amanda remembered that Rebecca had received several phone calls at work that upset her. Rebecca would never say who was calling, but after these calls, she would look sad and worried. Once, Amanda had heard Rebecca telling someone on the phone that she could not talk at work and would have to call them back later. Lisa Walker, Rebecca's sister, was harder to talk to because she was still staying in the Martinez house. Detective Thompson asked Lisa to meet him at the police station so they could speak privately. Lisa was nervous about talking behind David's back, but she wanted to help find out what happened to her sister. Lisa told Detective Thompson something that surprised him. She said that Rebecca had called her about 2 weeks before she disappeared, crying and upset. Rebecca had said that she and David were having serious problems, but she would not tell Lisa what the problems were about. During that phone call, Rebecca had asked Lisa if she could come stay with her in Columbus for a while. Lisa had said yes immediately and asked Rebecca if she was in danger. Rebecca had said she was not sure, but she needed time to think about her marriage. Lisa had expected Rebecca to pack a bag and drive to Columbus that weekend, but Rebecca never came. When Lisa called to ask what happened, Rebecca said she had decided to try to work things out with David instead. Rebecca made Lisa promise not to tell anyone about their conversation. Detective Thompson realized he needed to look deeper into David Martinez's background and behavior. He got permission from a judge to search David's office and look at his financial records. What the detective found there shocked him completely. David's accounting firm was very small, with only David and 2 other employees. David was in charge of managing money for about 30 clients, mostly small businesses and retired people. But when Detective Thompson looked at the account books, he found that thousands of dollars were missing. David had been stealing money from his clients for almost 2 years. He would take small amounts from different accounts, hoping that people would not notice right away. But the missing money added up to over $100,000, and some clients were starting to ask questions. Detective Thompson also found that David had serious gambling problems. David owed money to several casinos in nearby cities, and he had borrowed money from dangerous people who were demanding to be paid back. The detective found threatening letters in David's desk demanding payment of gambling debts. Even worse, Detective Thompson discovered that David had taken out a large life insurance policy on Rebecca just 6 months earlier. If Rebecca died, David would receive $500,000. That was enough money to pay all his debts and start over somewhere else. The detective looked at David's computer and found internet searches that were very disturbing. David had been looking up information about how to clean up blood, how to make a person disappear, and how long it takes for a missing person to be declared dead. These searches had been made in the weeks before Rebecca disappeared. Detective Thompson also found evidence that David had been lying about his business trip to Chicago. Hotel records showed that David had checked out of his hotel room 12 hours earlier than he had told police. Security cameras at gas stations showed David's car driving back toward Millfield Heights on the night Rebecca disappeared, not the next morning as he had claimed. Phone records revealed that David's cell phone had been near his house on the night Rebecca vanished, not in Chicago. The phone had connected to cell towers close to Elm Street between 10 p.m. and midnight on October 14th. David had lied about where he was when his wife was killed. Detective Thompson found more evidence at a hardware store across town. The store's security cameras showed David buying bleach, rubber gloves, plastic sheets, and cleaning supplies 2 days before Rebecca disappeared. The store clerk remembered David because he had paid with cash and seemed nervous while making his purchases. The detective also discovered that Rebecca had been planning to leave David. She had secretly met with a divorce lawyer named Patricia Hayes 3 times in September. Rebecca had told the lawyer about David's anger problems and his controlling behavior. She was afraid of what David might do if he found out she wanted a divorce. Rebecca had opened her own bank account and had been secretly saving money to support herself after leaving David. She had also been looking at apartments in other cities where she could start a new life. Rebecca had been planning her escape, but she had run out of time. Bank records showed that David had been using Rebecca's credit cards after she disappeared. He had taken cash advances totaling $15,000, money he said was for search expenses but had actually used to pay gambling debts. David had been stealing from his missing wife while pretending to look for her. When Detective Thompson put all this evidence together, he realized that David Martinez was not the loving husband everyone thought he was. David was a thief, a liar, and a man desperate enough to kill his own wife for insurance money. The detective now had enough evidence to arrest David Martinez for the murder of Rebecca Martinez. But there was still one big problem. Rebecca's body had never been found, and without it, the case would be much harder to prove in court. On December 3, 2019, police officers arrived at the Martinez house early in the morning to arrest David Martinez for the murder of his wife Rebecca. David was still in his pajamas when Detective Thompson knocked on the door and read him his rights. David kept saying he was innocent as the officers put handcuffs on his wrists. He told them they were making a terrible mistake and that he loved his wife more than anything in the world. But Detective Thompson had heard these words from guilty people many times before. The news of David's arrest shocked the people of Millfield Heights. Many neighbors could not believe that the quiet accountant who had helped search for his wife was actually her killer. Some people still thought David was innocent, and that the police had arrested the wrong man. Lisa Walker was staying in a hotel now because she could not bear to be in the house where her sister had been murdered. When she heard about David's arrest, she felt both relief and terrible sadness. She was glad that someone would pay for Rebecca's death, but she still did not have her sister back. The trial began 8 months later, in August 2020. The prosecutor was District Attorney Robert Chen, a man who had won convictions in many difficult murder cases. Helping him was Assistant District Attorney Maria Rodriguez, who was an expert at explaining forensic evidence to juries. David's defense lawyer was William Foster, an expensive attorney who specialized in murder cases. David's family had hired Foster because he was known for getting people acquitted even when the evidence against them seemed strong. Foster's strategy was to argue that the police had not proven David was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. The trial took place in the Millfield County Courthouse, a large brick building in the center of town. Every day, the courtroom was packed with people who wanted to see what would happen to David Martinez. Rebecca's family sat in the front row, while David's parents and brother sat on the other side of the room. Prosecutor Chen gave his opening statement first. He told the jury that David Martinez had killed his wife because he needed money to pay his gambling debts and because Rebecca was planning to divorce him. Chen said the evidence would show that David was a liar, a thief, and a murderer who had fooled everyone with his act of being a loving husband. Defense lawyer Foster told the jury a different story. He said that David Martinez was innocent and that the real killer was still free. Foster argued that the blood in the basement could have come from an accident and that Rebecca might have left home voluntarily after being injured. He said the police had rushed to blame David instead of looking for other suspects. The first witness was Amanda Johnson, who testified about finding Rebecca missing and discovering that she had left behind her purse, keys, and phone. Amanda told the jury that Rebecca would never have left these important items behind unless something terrible had happened to her. Detective Thompson spent 2 days on the witness stand explaining how the investigation had developed. He showed the jury photos of the blood evidence in the basement and described how someone had tried to clean it up. The detective also explained how David's lies about his location and activities had made him a suspect. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the forensic expert, gave some of the most important testimony in the trial. She explained how the luminol test had revealed extensive blood spatter throughout the basement. Dr. Mitchell told the jury that the blood patterns showed someone had been hit multiple times with a heavy object and had lost a large amount of blood. The DNA test results showed that the blood in the basement belonged to Rebecca Martinez. There was so much blood that Dr. Mitchell was certain Rebecca had died from her injuries. The expert also found David's DNA mixed with Rebecca's blood on the basement wall, which meant he had been present when she was bleeding. Jennifer Adams testified about the changes she had noticed in Rebecca before her disappearance. She told the jury about the bruise on Rebecca's arm and how Rebecca had been working late more often. Jennifer also said that Rebecca had seemed afraid of something in the weeks before she died. Lisa Walker's testimony was very emotional. She cried as she told the jury about Rebecca's phone call asking if she could come stay in Columbus. Lisa explained how Rebecca had seemed scared and had said she was having serious problems with David. Many people in the courtroom were also crying when Lisa finished her testimony. The prosecutor presented evidence about David's financial crimes and gambling debts. Bank officials testified about the missing money from client accounts and the threatening letters from people David owed money to. The life insurance company representative explained how David would have received $500,000 if Rebecca died. Hotel security footage from Chicago proved that David had lied about when he left his business trip. The video clearly showed David checking out of his hotel and loading his car 12 hours earlier than he had told police. Gas station cameras along the highway showed David driving toward home on the night Rebecca was killed. Cell phone records were also crucial evidence. The phone company technician explained how David's phone had connected to towers near his house on the night of October 14th, proving he was not in Chicago as he had claimed. The last call from Rebecca's phone had been at 9:47 p.m. that night, just before David's phone appeared in the area. Hardware store employees testified about David's purchase of cleaning supplies 2 days before the murder. The store manager showed the jury security video of David buying bleach, plastic sheets, and rubber gloves while acting nervous and suspicious. David had paid with cash to avoid leaving a paper trail. Patricia Hayes, the divorce lawyer, testified that Rebecca had been planning to leave David. Hayes told the jury that Rebecca was afraid of her husband's temper and had been saving money to start a new life. Rebecca had scheduled another meeting with the lawyer for the week after she disappeared, planning to file for divorce. When it was time for the defense to present their case, Lawyer Foster called several character witnesses, who said David was a good man who loved his wife. David's brother testified that David had always treated Rebecca well and had never shown any signs of violence. Foster also brought in his own expert who questioned the blood evidence. This expert suggested that Rebecca could have been injured in an accident and then left the house on her own. He argued that the amount of blood was not necessarily enough to prove that Rebecca had been murdered. The defense lawyer tried to suggest that Rebecca might have been having an affair and had left town with another man. Foster pointed out that Rebecca's body had never been found, which meant she could still be alive somewhere. He argued that without a body, the prosecution could not prove that Rebecca was actually dead, but Prosecutor Chen was ready for these arguments. During cross-examination, he showed that the defense expert had been wrong about the blood evidence. Chen also presented evidence that Rebecca had been faithful to David and had no secret relationships with other men. The most dramatic moment of the trial came when David Martinez decided to testify in his own defense. Against his lawyer's advice, David took the witness stand and swore to tell the truth about what happened to his wife. David stuck to his story that he had been in Chicago when Rebecca disappeared. He said he loved his wife and would never hurt her. David claimed that someone else must have broken into their house and attacked Rebecca while he was away on business, but Prosecutor Chen destroyed David's testimony during cross-examination. Chen showed David the hotel security footage that proved he was lying about when he left Chicago. Chen also confronted David with evidence of his gambling debts, his theft from clients, and his internet searches about disposing of bodies. David became angry and defensive as Chen questioned him. At one point, David lost his temper and shouted at the prosecutor, showing the jury the violent side of his personality that Rebecca had been afraid of. David's own testimony had made him look more guilty than innocent. After 6 weeks of testimony, both sides gave their closing arguments to the jury. Prosecutor Chen reminded the jurors of all the evidence against David: the blood in his basement, his lies about his location, his financial crimes, and his motive to kill Rebecca for insurance money. Defense lawyer Foster made one last attempt to create reasonable doubt. He urged the jury not to convict David just because they disliked him. Foster argued that being a bad husband and a thief did not make David a murderer. The jury deliberated for 3 days before reaching their verdict. When they returned to the courtroom, the foreman stood up and announced that they had found David Martinez guilty of first-degree murder. The courtroom was completely silent as the jury foreman read the guilty verdict. David Martinez sat at the defense table with his head in his hands, finally understanding that his lies and crimes had caught up with him. Behind him, Rebecca's family hugged each other and cried tears of relief and sadness. Lisa Walker looked across the courtroom at the man who had killed her sister. For months, she had lived in the same house with David, cooking meals for him and trying to comfort him, while he grieved. Now she knew that David had been lying to her face every single day, pretending to miss Rebecca while knowing exactly what had happened to her. Judge Helen Morrison scheduled David's sentencing hearing for 2 weeks later. During those 2 weeks, David remained in jail while his lawyer tried to convince him to tell the police where he had hidden Rebecca's body. Foster explained that showing remorse and helping the family find Rebecca might convince the judge to give David a lighter sentence. But David refused to admit that he had killed his wife, even after the jury had found him guilty. He continued to claim that he was innocent and that the real killer was still free. David said he could not tell police where Rebecca's body was because he did not know what had happened to her. This made Rebecca's family even more angry and heartbroken. They had hoped that David would finally tell the truth after being convicted. Lisa and her parents desperately wanted to bury Rebecca properly and have a place where they could visit her grave. David's continued lies felt like he was hurting them all over again. On March 22, 2021, David Martinez returned to court for his sentencing hearing. Judge Morrison had read all the evidence from the trial and listened to statements from Rebecca's family about how the murder had affected their lives. Lisa Walker spoke first, telling the judge how much she missed her sister and how terrible it was, not knowing where Rebecca's body was located. Lisa said that David had not only killed Rebecca, but he had also tortured her family by refusing to tell them where he had put her. She asked the judge to give David the harshest sentence possible. Rebecca's parents, Robert and Mary Thompson, also spoke at the hearing. They were both in their 70s and had lost their older daughter in the most horrible way possible. They told the judge that they might die without ever knowing where Rebecca was buried, and they blamed David for stealing even their chance to say goodbye to their daughter properly. Jennifer Adams and Amanda Johnson also gave statements about how Rebecca's murder had changed their lives. They talked about losing their best friend and how afraid they now felt in their own homes. They said that David had destroyed not only Rebecca's life, but the sense of safety that everyone in Millfield Heights had once felt. Prosecutor Chen asked Judge Morrison to sentence David to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Chen argued that David had planned the murder carefully, had tried to cover up his crime, and had shown no remorse for what he had done. Chen said that David was too dangerous to ever be released back into society. Defense lawyer Foster asked for a lighter sentence, arguing that David had no previous criminal record and that the murder had not been premeditated. Foster said that David deserved a chance at redemption and asked the judge to consider a sentence that would allow David to be eligible for parole after 25 years. Judge Morrison listened to all the statements and then announced David's sentence. She said that the murder of Rebecca Martinez was one of the most cruel and calculated crimes she had ever seen. The judge noted that David had betrayed the trust of his wife, his family, and his entire community. Judge Morrison sentenced David Martinez to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She said that David's refusal to reveal the location of Rebecca's body showed that he had no remorse and deserved no mercy from the court. David would spend the rest of his life behind bars, never again able to hurt anyone else. After the sentencing, Detective Thompson continued to search for Rebecca's body. The police had looked through landfills, searched remote areas outside of town, and even drained several ponds and lakes. But David had hidden Rebecca so well that no trace of her had ever been found. The detective interviewed David several more times in prison, hoping to convince him to reveal Rebecca's location. Thompson explained to David that telling the truth might help him feel better and would certainly help Rebecca's family heal. But David maintained his innocence and claimed he could not help because he did not know where Rebecca was. Over the next 2 years, police received dozens of tips from people who thought they had found something related to Rebecca's disappearance. Every tip was investigated carefully, but none of them led to finding Rebecca's remains. Detective Thompson retired in 2023, but he left detailed notes for other officers to continue the search. Lisa Walker decided to honor her sister's memory by starting the Rebecca Martinez Foundation. The organization helps domestic violence victims escape from dangerous relationships and provides support for families of missing persons. Lisa wanted to make sure that Rebecca's death would help save other women from similar fates. The foundation also offers rewards for information leading to the discovery of missing persons. Lisa hopes that someday, someone will remember seeing something that will help find Rebecca's body. She visits the police station regularly to ask if there are any new developments in the search. The people of Millfield Heights struggled to understand how they had been so wrong about David Martinez. Many neighbors felt guilty for not seeing the signs of domestic violence in the Martinez marriage. The community started programs to help people recognize and report domestic abuse before it leads to tragedy. Rebecca's house on Elm Street was eventually sold to a new family who did not know its history. Lisa could not bear to keep the house where her sister had been murdered, and David's conviction meant that his share of the property went to pay his legal debts and restitution to his victims. The Martinez case became famous throughout Ohio as an example of how domestic violence can hide behind a perfect facade. Police departments started using the case to train officers about recognizing signs of abuse and investigating missing person cases more thoroughly from the beginning. David Martinez remains in the Ohio State Penitentiary, where he has been disciplined several times for fighting with other prisoners and refusing to participate in counseling programs. He spends most of his time alone in his cell, still claiming that he is innocent of his wife's murder. Prison officials say that David receives very few visitors and rarely gets mail from anyone outside. His own family has largely abandoned him, unable to accept what he did to Rebecca. His parents moved away from Ohio shortly after the trial, too ashamed to remain in the community where everyone knew their son was a murderer. Sometimes, other prisoners who are hoping to reduce their own sentences claim that David has confessed to them about killing Rebecca. But when police investigate these claims, they always turn out to be lies told by criminals who want to make deals with prosecutors. The question that haunts everyone who worked on the Rebecca Martinez case is whether the truth will ever fully come to light. David took Rebecca away from her family forever, but he also took away their chance to properly mourn her and say goodbye. Detective Thompson, now retired, still keeps Rebecca's case file in his home office. He continues to hope that someday, David will develop a conscience and tell the truth about where he put Rebecca's body. Thompson knows that this might be the only way Rebecca's family will ever find peace. The case serves as a reminder that domestic violence affects people from all backgrounds and social classes. Rebecca Martinez seemed to have everything a person could want, but behind closed doors she was living in fear of the man who was supposed to protect and love her. Most importantly, Rebecca's story shows that the most dangerous time for a domestic violence victim is when they decide to leave their abuser. Rebecca had been planning to divorce David and start a new life, but she ran out of time before she could escape safely. For Lisa Walker and the rest of Rebecca's family, the search for answers continues. They hope that someday, somewhere, someone will find the evidence that will finally bring Rebecca home.